Hey, everybody, welcome back to another fantastic episode of Fix Your BS, where BS stands for belief systems, also business systems, and sometimes even balance sheets. We also bring you always, every week, bring you amazing guests that are doing amazing things in different areas of life. And today we got somebody that's crushing it in the business world. And he's going to give some great strategies and tips and tricks and things that are going to help you improve your life in multiple different areas, but definitely in the business area. Adam Kroener is here with us today. He is an award-winning 8-figure CEO, and he started Drink Carbliss. If you don't know Carbliss, Carbliss, you're going to know about it today, and you're going to have to go get yourself some. So, Adam, thanks for being here. Really appreciate you taking the time to give some value to our listeners and the people that are watching this online.
Thanks for having me, Dr. Greg. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, people that know me on this, I own a regenerative medical clinic, if I could talk, god dang, regenerative medicine clinic, but I also own an online company. Apparently I've been talking too much today. I need a Carbliss probably, don't you think?
Yeah, that'll probably straighten you out. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe mellow me out. Anyway, I own a regenerative medicine clinic. We took that doing a few $100,000 a year to up into the multiple 7 figures. And we have an online company that helps regional practices and companies that are more service-based improve. But I love talking to people in different industries, especially when we're talking about creating something that is in a very, very competitive space. So I want to learn a little bit about your history and your background. I've been watching you on Instagram here for a little bit, which is why we invited you to be on this show, which everybody needs to go to. It's The Real Adam Kroener, and you can click the link as always, or you can go to @drinkcarbliss, click the link too. But tell me a little bit about your history and where this idea came from and how's the last couple of years been for you?
Yeah, so the history is kind of the piece that helped get starting this business over the hump. Love cars and motorcycles, always assumed that someday I would own a business revolving around that because they say follow your passion. So to go way back, I was in outside sales and then left to go to Iraq shortly after I turned 18. Came back in 2008 and the economy took a giant crap in August. Buddy came in and said, hey, you want to go work at the cheese factory? And I was, at that time, I think it was $14.62 an hour. Second shift. I said, well, nobody's coming in the door and there's no Rolodex to go off of because I had been in Iraq for so long. So let's go. That was in 2008. Over the next 9 years, I worked my way up to being director of manufacturing. So the reason that's beneficial is I got to understand that business and framework really in depth. And ultimately, fast forward to 2018, I'm doing keto, low carb, low sugar with my wife. That's when seltzers really took off. And I tried one and thought it was not at all what was advertised on the can, right? Super carbonated, not very flavorful. I was just picturing this nice, fruity, tasty drink. But it was 2 carbs, 2 grams of sugar. That was not the case. I actually spit it out, didn't like it at all. So that idea of a fruit flavored drink being in a can, I don't know why. I had bartended in the past to help out a buddy of mine's family supper club, and just started mixing and very quickly had a vodka lemonade that had no carbs and no sugar. Googled all the ingredients to make sure. And ultimately, friends and family loved it. After about 2 or 3 months, I'm sick of carrying my stuff everywhere. And because of that operations background, I knew that most of what's on the retail shelf is not made by that place, right? So if you go to Walmart and see Great Value, they have chips, they have cheese, they have crackers, they have cream cheese, they have milk. I think they do their own milk now, but all that other stuff is made by a contract manufacturer. So the idea that I could maybe come up with this batch, make it into a bigger batch, I could find somebody to make it for us. So that piece of manufacturing understanding really helped give us the runway to say, I don't need to invest $10 million into a manufacturing facility and hire 30 or 40 or 50 people. If I can find a way to get this into a scalable batch, I can find somebody to make it for me and scale from there. That was 2018. We launched on store shelves in 2019. I quit my job in 2021. And now we have 5 manufacturers, and we're a top 5 RTD in the nation, only selling to 10% of the population.
That's amazing, man. What a heck of a story. First of all, thanks for your service. Really, really pro service members, any service member, but really appreciate that for sure. And I love that you took the step that a lot of people are afraid to take. You know, they might have a great idea. In fact, I think everybody comes up with at least one great idea. They might have something that they're like, oh, I wish I would have, I should have, or maybe I will write a book, maybe I will start a business, but something holds them back. Most of the time it's some fear. What was it about this that you said, you know what? I'm not afraid. I don't care. I'm going for it.
Well, so going back to the desiring to have a business, I had that desire for a very long time. My wife is an accountant by trade. So the weird thing is it was almost never really a succinct decision. So it was like convincing my wife that we should put this into a can. And from the point she said yes, was me basically asking for $2,500 to find our formulation company to put it into this scalable batch, which took about 6 months. I was actually getting nervous for a while. But once we took that step, which was only $2,500 in the grand scheme of things, wasn't much. Everything else, like the weird thing is at that point I put blinders on, and now I don't care what crap happens in between. I'm putting this in a can and it's getting on the shelf. And then, from there, it's just kind of sequential growth of now I want more SKUs on the shelf. Now I want to be in more stores. Now I want to be in different types of stores. But that's the weird thing for me that I can't pinpoint is that it was this kind of joking, like we should put this in a can. Once you said yes, we put the dollars out to commit. Like I just zeroed in on, I committed, I'm going to do it. So we definitely had our share the first 3 years of just getting stomped on, financially, operationally.
Talk about that for a second, because I think that's the thing, when people do pull the trigger on something like this, because I did the same thing. I was a chiropractic physician. I had a chiropractic practice, and I was like, I can't keep doing what I'm doing the way I'm doing it the rest of my life. I'm going to transition over into this integrated medical space, which can totally increase the revenue, but it's also going to increase the headache. And I didn't think about the headache. All I could think of was we're going to help more people. We're going to make a bigger impact. We're going to make more money. So why wouldn't I, right? And then the next 3 years of what did I do? What did I get myself into? I was the only one on my side at that time. So a lot of people take look into the future and they can see the good. They can't see the hardship. They know it's not going to be easy, but they don't really know how hard. And two things happen. Either they jump in thinking, oh, it's all, going to be sunshine and rainbows, or the fear of what if makes them stop. So, what was it for you? And I'd like to talk to you a little bit about those things of getting stomped on, because there's people listening to this right now that are in that moment of getting stomped on.
Yeah. Well, so the podcast, and not to deter from this one, How I Built This by Guy Raz. It was originally with NPR, and I was driving an hour to and from to work. The reason I started listening was a friend said the Honest Tea story with Whole Foods reminds me of what you're going through when I was developing it. I ended up going through almost every single one of those podcasts. The benefit, though, Dr. Greg, is that podcast goes through, I think it was Howard Schultz from Starbucks, interviews him and talks about his very first coffee shop that failed, right? And then the place that he bought and brought things together. And now we love to look at it and go, oh, it must be nice. But he's got all these founders from the 60s, Southwest Airlines, Dell Computers, right? All the stuff that is normal for us today. And he talks through this person from day one. And honestly, that podcast helped me so many times when I had the crap days of the FDA taking an extra 4 months to approve my label, or not being able to. It took us 6 months to actually get this scalable formula after I spent $2,500, which was kind of my, hey, wife approval money. 6 months was way too long. And so
I'm sure there was a few when's that going to be done? When's that going to be done? When's that going to be done? Questions. Yeah.
Just a little bit. But that podcast, just every time I was in a crap position, like in 1 hour, you walk through every entrepreneur's journey, and everyone who is kicking butt and taking names, they've all went through the shit, every single one. And we don't see it, right? We see Starbucks and you know that they're in the news now because they have this huge workforce that wants to do something different. But it doesn't get talked about that he had a coffee shop that failed. I think it was maybe a couple, and then ended up buying something else and incorporating it. Jim Cook from Boston Beer was near and dear to my heart because of the industry and the space. Seth Goldwyn, I think his name is, from Honest Tea. Then there's like this lady who built a suitcase type company. But it's just every entrepreneur from every walk of life, and it's an hour walking through. And so that piece just kind of make me continue to realize that all the stuff I'm seeing on retail shelves makes it look easy. And I know we do too. The amount of inbounds I get from, oh, you guys are killing it, must be nice, you've got a great tasting liquid. And it's like, yeah, I mean, we lost 150 grand the first 2 years based on me working full time. That was nice, wasn't it? But nobody was there telling me it must be nice at that time.
Nobody sees that side of it. Nobody sees that side. They see the what they believe is to be amazing. One of the guys that I talk about sometimes is Andy Frisella in what he's done with First Form. And so I've been lucky enough to hang out with them a little bit, Andy and Emily, and he'll talk about, well, what's harder? Is it where they're at now, a multiple $1 billion plus company, or was it in the beginning? He goes, well, certain aspects are harder now because it used to be 10 guys in a room and we'd make a decision and just run with it. Now there's hundreds and hundreds of employees. So now we have to do this operational side, which is totally different than starting the company side where you're the one out there like making the deals and everything. He goes, but people have this idea that building a business, especially a big one or in the retail space, which is really, really competitive, they have this idea of like, oh, well, you're creating a product that's on a shelf and being sold. So, I mean, it's got to be nice. It's got to be easy. It's like you're having fun and doing all these events and whatever, and it's got to be a good time. But they don't see the endless hours of looking at spreadsheets and trying to figure out where the holes are and dealing with the delays that weren't expected. Because we've had that, hey, you've got $30,000 of orders coming out, and the credit card company is putting your credit card sales on hold because it's out of context from what you normally sell. Therefore, they're going to hold it for 7 days. So you have a $60,000 swing like that. Like, wait a second here.
So I know you said at the beginning, which is on my Instagram, the 8-figure thing. Give us about 3 months and we should be at about we'll be 9 figures in trailing 12. I did not take a paycheck from January all the way till April 25th because we're sticking every dollar we have into inventory, and we were in the middle of a banking transition. But again, like, how many people are willing to do that? I am betting on the come, right? And that's not the first time, probably nor the last time that I'll ever have to do that. And even our team sees a very successful P&L. We share it with all of them. But do they know that there's so much things that happen in the background to make that happen? I share with them the fun stuff, the shitty stuff, like me not taking a paycheck. Our finance and accounting person knows. Everybody else, there's no value. But when you think about the desire, it can come with some really cool things, some really cool events. We're sponsoring the Milwaukee Brewers and we're doing the Red Wings and the Tigers, right? That is all awesome. We get to go to some really cool events, but it's not all unicorns and rainbows either.
Yeah, there's a lot of hard stuff that goes on in the background for sure. And I just wanted to bring that up and really hit that hard for a minute because there's so many people listening to this that are going through that. Those nights where you're like, why am I doing this? Is this the right move? Am I doing this? Is it going to turn out? And that's really the hard part. is, and Alex Hormozy talks about that a lot. If you follow him at all, but talks about like the hard part about entrepreneurship is that you're putting your time, energy, and effort into something that has zero guaranteed payoff at all. You don't know if it's going to work out. You don't know. You're going out on faith on this limb of belief, and you're not. You're putting a lot of faith into things that are out of your control and believing that it's all going to work out if you keep focused, which is like you said, blinders, just keep on going, keep on pushing. Is that something you developed? Did the time in the service, did that help with that? Or is it something that you just always had?
Oh, it's definitely been an evolution. I mean, for lack of better words, evolution, like as a high school, I was a piece of shit. And so now the person I try to be is the one that would have hopefully pulled my head out of my butt a little sooner. But the military gave me an appreciation for discipline as well as structure, but it also gave me the understanding that too much structure is not worth it. Meaning I can wipe my butt. I don't need to be told how many squares and how to fold it. But so that's, I guess, gave us runway for the business, but the evolution more or less came from on a leadership side, acting as the military person that I thought I should be. I didn't get too far in there, so my version was yelling. That's not the accurate way, nor how they train people, but that's as much as I knew. And I read the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. That book changed my life in 2014. Just, I would say, general outlook of trying a few things and seeing it work. Met a gentleman near here named Steve Babowski, who ran a local franchise. Did a training with him 2 years consecutively at the cheese factory I was working at, and ran about 110 people through that program. Saw how beneficial that was, including myself. I went through 3 shifts of this class for 8 weeks, 2 different times, and ended up becoming a trainer just because I believed in it so much. So I would say that framework of, you said earlier, outside of our control. And one thing that I learned in an exercise that I've shifted my head to is that everything in our life is in our control. Meaning, number one, if I don't like it, I'm going to physically change it. And now there are some things that I can't physically change. For example, if my best friend died in 2016, I can't change that. He's dead, right? Got the phone call, he's gone. Not a doctor, can't bring him back to life. The other option to put that back into my control is that I can change my perception towards the situation. So I can say, woe is me. The only reason he was on a motorcycle is because Adam used to ride one. He ride with me and make myself feel bad. Or I can flip my perception and say, you know what? Dr. Greg never had the opportunity to know such a man. I am blessed to have known a guy named Stefan Fiedler. Think about all the positive things that he brought to my life and focus on that and that only. And that's where it's shifting I can't physically change it, but I'm going to change everything towards it to just focus on the good.
I literally talk about a couple of those things in the book. Picture BS the book. Because it's all about perception. Like I call it time traveling. You can travel back in time and relook at something where you had a connection or a belief about that it was bad for you, or it was, the world against you or whatever. And if you keep replaying that, then it becomes your belief. And therefore you will start to see things as the world being against you. You can time travel back in the past because the only power the past has over you is now in your thought about it. So in looking back and saying, well, what does that really mean? And I have a really great, story about that in here too. It talks about when I was growing up, my dad, was extremely disciplined about things, on me, and I took that to mean that I wasn't good enough and that sort of thing. Well, as I got older, I looked back and I'm like, you know what? Really, he was just trying to make me strong. Like he was just trying to make me a strong individual that would be able to take on the challenge of being an adult, of having a family, and turned out to be owning a business as well. And so it turned from blame to appreciation and gratitude, being like, he could have been a real jerk, but he was there And so when you really relook at it, I was like, you know what? He's an awesome dude. And so that's changed our relationship because I didn't have this wall that I had put up based on my own beliefs. So stuff like that. And so I love you bringing that up because it's so true. And I love that you figured that out. So many people don't do that.
I'm going to argue the fact too, though, that even let's say your dad did it for the opposite reasons, right? Just because maybe he was, and I don't know the situation, but I'm going to pretend. Right. He's demeaning because it makes him feel better as a man, right? Because there's definitely people who've had those parenting experiences. But if you're going to build a house and you cut the lumber, would you grab the sawdust and cut it again? Absolutely not. So whether there was good intent or bad intent on that father's, don't saw sawdust. Like, focus on it, move forward. And sawing sawdust sounds fucking pointless, excuse my French. But man, the amount of time, to your point, that people just dwell on the past, that shit is gone. The only thing we got is everything in front of us. Yeah, I hear you 100%. I wrote your book down. I'll have to check that out.
I'll send you one.
I'll buy it.
Well, thanks. Appreciate it. I'm gonna have to go buy myself some Carbliss too while we're at it. And I'll have to try that. Might have to take a trip north from St. Louis up to your neck of the woods. Maybe I can grab some on the way.
It's in St. Louis, brother. We just launched there about 6 weeks ago.
Well, congratulations, man. That's awesome. So what is some of the biggest lessons that you've learned in expanding this brand to different areas, different regions? How big is the area right now that you're in?
So earlier you heard me say we sell to about 10% of the population. We're basically in the central U.S. So Wisconsin, Michigan, Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, Iowa, and Arkansas are the fully distributed states, and we're still working on finishing Nebraska, Missouri, Illinois, and Louisiana. So for most brands, that's a flyover state, but our first year we did 80,000 in revenue, lost about 20 grand in that whopping 3 months or 4 months. But we built the business to really understand all the inputs and outputs, meaning just like a fully in-depth budget. And I think you had maybe reached out to me after the Entrepreneurs on Fire podcast, which I talked about kind of just the financial scrutiny. The funny thing is right now, I'm using that same playbook to run the business, telling you that we're going to be doing 9 figures, and it's started at 80,000. A lot of times I talk to entrepreneurs and I show them that tool, and the response they give me is, I'm too small for that. Because they started up whenever, right? But my challenge back to them is, if you have that mentality now, what is the indicator to go big enough? Because
it's the same thing though when you're talking about somebody that's earning money and they're like, well, I'll start saving when I earn more money. I'm like, no, it's the habit of saving. You're not going to start saving when you have $1 million as opposed to when you have 100,000, as opposed to when you have 50. You start when you're young. You start saving. You start building the habit, and then when you're a small company, and I've done this, I made the mistake of not having my stuff put together, and then all of a sudden we go from a few $100,000 to a couple million, and you don't have your stuff in order. The little things turn into big monsters, and they're harder to overcome when they're big monsters.
No longer is it an adjustment. You're solving a problem and spending far too much time on it.
Right. When you could be working on, improving your operations, improving your distribution, improving your team, developing it, sales. I mean, you could be doing on something that would actually improve the business, as opposed to, oh crap, we got to put out this fire. Most of the time it's a financial fire.
Right. And so I think the learning goes really, I'm not saying you start a business and spend $100,000 a month in marketing. You'll go under really quick, right? But it's, what are the no cost, probably I can't think of the word.
Extenuating?
Low cost. Yeah, sure. But like cost you a ton of time, right?
Yeah,
no money, but a ton of time. Those things that can give you the understanding of a big business, those are the things that are probably valuable. I went through all these return on investment scenarios to go, okay, if I spent this to make my first batch and our first commercial, how many do I have to sell just to, like, and I broke it down in Wisconsin by county. How many do I have to sell just to make my money back? And that made eating an elephant super easy because it was like bite by bite. Well, if I do, 5 cases per county, I make my money back or whatever it was. And I realized pretty quick, you don't ever focus like that, but made it easy to understand that I could just impact each area just a little bit. And we can make a go at it.
That's awesome though, because the more you know your numbers, and I talk about this in business all the time, you have to know your numbers in acquisition, in finance, and in growth, any strategy you're putting into place. You got to know your numbers. If I'm going to do this marketing campaign, and in my world, which is the small service-based type business, okay, we're going to do this marketing campaign, which is funny because when I do coaching for small businesses, most of the time they think they need more marketing. And I go, well, okay, let's say your marketing works really well and it drives in your, 20% more business. Are you going to be able to service that business properly? Are you going to be able to actually come through on what they are expecting? And for the most part, it's no. We don't generally focus on marketing first. We focus on their team and operations and the systems that are in place, or even the sales process. Because there's a lot of times you don't need to increase your marketing. You need to improve your sales. You're getting the leads. You just need to improve the sales side. So that way you end up with the, orders that you're looking for and gives you the increase that you're looking for. So knowing your numbers is so important. And the fact that you teach that or that you're talking about that is extremely valuable to everyone listening to this, especially if you have your own business or you're thinking about starting a business. The other thing is that the numbers that you project and think will happen probably won't. So tell me a little bit about that when you're doing these projections. Where do you pivot? How do you move as things unfold, especially when it's not what you expect?
Well, so 2020 and I think that was the only year that we said we were going to do a lot more sales than we did. And that was, I focus on, so the revenue and then every single expense, what's the dollar, why, and then focusing on why did I make the assumption? So I usually have that built in. So then what assumptions did I have that didn't come true should lead me to the answer of why did I not hit this? So going back to the one that we didn't hit, we were doing X sales in Wisconsin, had some consultants say, hey, you need to go to Texas and Florida and whatever. It was 21x the population in 5 states. So thinking about the structure, like I did I call it Adam math, some Excel formula, I'm sure. And I think I had us doing, it was like 3 million in year 2, and we just came off at 80,000. We did 280,000. So few things. One, we went into Nebraska and Colorado through these consultants who were going to get us a bunch of states that I just did not list. And then the other one was we had no revenue for 4 months because of an operations issue where a manufacturer couldn't make product for 4 months. Thank you, COVID. And so when we're evaluating that, I knew that my assumption was based on these big states. Well, we didn't get into them. So then why did I make those assumptions? What was the consultants? So that in turn, within about 9 months, led me to bringing somebody in full-time rather than using consultants. And it's, to your point, it's never right. Our challenge so far the last 3 years has been we sell a hell of a lot more than we thought we did. And so my challenge is not having enough product, empty shelves, not good. We've solved that for this year, but it's just looking at it as brass tacks. These are the assumptions I made. And just judging yourself against it in not a good or a bad way, right? It's just, these are the assumptions I made. This is where I was incorrect. This is where I was correct. This is where I was over leveraged, under leveraged, and understanding the why of each of those. And it just helps you slowly fine tune. We've been doing this for 5 years, and this is probably the closest we've been on budget from a percentage. We're only like 1.5% off right now. Normally we've been like 50% off.
I love that you're talking about retrospection, because I talk about that a lot too, where you look backwards and you go, okay, like you said, what were the assumptions? And you just look backwards without any emotional connection to it. Okay, we thought this would happen, and this is what actually happened. So what did we do in there? What did we assume? What were the inputs? What were the expected outputs? And when you start to take the emotion out of it, then you start to realize that, it's just an action game. Like, okay, well, we thought this was going to occur. It didn't. Why didn't it? So therefore we learn from that. And that's why you're getting better at your numbers. So many people though, which is why small businesses or businesses in America, only 600,000 businesses in America right now have over 12 employees. 5.4 million have between 2 and 12. And the reason why is because so many businesses are small businesses. There's one person, they started the company, and everything is connected to them. And because it's connected to them, there's a cap. And generally that cap is 12 employees because they can't handle more than dealing with 12 people and do stuff in the business. And so one of the things we teach them is all about how to expand past that to where you're not the key, dependent or key person dependent for your business. But that retrospection side, so few people do that. They blame, well, that didn't happen because of this. And because they make that connection, they literally never actually analyze it. They just assume that's what it is, call it a reason, and then keep doing the same thing and then get mad when they don't produce more. And you're like, well, yeah, but remember this thing that you did? That's where you stopped growing. Why?
Right.
Why is that? Right? Let's look at it. And then when you have somebody third party kind of look at it. Also love that you talk about the consultants. Consider the source. Always consider the source. Yeah, they're consultants, but their job is to consult. Their job is not to make the decision. You have to ultimately be the one.
Yeah. I've become a firm believer that one of the most costly things in this world that prevents people from making money is pride.
Ooh, let's talk about that for a minute.
It goes back to what you said earlier. If you get offended by a fact, which is definitely the way our world seems to be moving, but we won't go there for now. If you get offended by a fact, like, Dr. Greg, I don't like gray, and I don't think you should have chose that for a shirt, right? Like, that's my opinion. If you get offended by that, right, maybe you don't like black or V-necks, so I shouldn't have wore this. But it's like, those are so simplistic lobs. But now when we talk about facts and figures and why did you miss your revenue by $300,000, why did you make those assumptions? Right? The pride is what gets the emotion caught up. Oh, well, I should have been right. Like, no, this is a practice of trying to find out where the assumptions came from, where the miss was made, so we can focus on correcting it in the future. Will you ever be 100% right? Absolutely not. If somebody has the ability to do that, they will be a quadbillionaire in weeks, right? Nobody's ever right all the time. Never. With that preface of understanding, and I like to say nobody wakes up to suck, right? So anybody who is on my team, I'm going to bet that they're coming to bat with all of them. And so if they made the best decision they had with the information they had at that time, 3 weeks later, maybe new information. So let's talk about that. Why is it information valuable? Why does it change our assumption? It doesn't mean you were wrong 3 weeks ago. You still gave the best information you had. And that's the pride piece, where there's so many people that they get asked that question, and that probably was me 10 years ago. How dare you ask me that, right? Take, as you said, take the emotion out of it. Let's just look at this as a fact-based question and answer. And once you take that emotion out, and I'm going to call it generally pride, it allows you to just get to the brass tacks, look at what it is, adjust, and move forward.
Yeah, dude, that's so right. And I think that's one of the reasons why over the last 4 or 5 years I've been way more successful, is because I understand that you just got to eliminate the emotional side. That's one of the reasons why I started coaching small businesses, because I've been through a lot of pain and anguish and fire and confusion and misunderstandings and all these things that really develop you into a better business person, a better individual. But I'm grateful for those things now. In the moment, it was really hard, but now I can go and remove the emotion and coach someone in their business, or really, I'm bigger into acquisitions and joint ventures than anything, because coaching, you don't really have any control. People can do what they want. But if I have a little bit of skin in the game, I'm like, look, this is how it's going to be. This is how we're going to make this work, because you have to see this. But I don't have to have the emotion into it. And I can just see the numbers and see what's going on and then provide that guidance, which is one of the reasons why I really enjoy that. But it's so hard for a lot of people because of that desire to be right. And the funny thing is that when you were a kid, everything you tried the first time, you screwed up. Everything. And what makes you think as an adult, now that we have, more understanding of the world, that you're supposed to be right in the first try? It never works out like that. Look at the most successful people in the world. They're never right the first try. The difference is they just keep going. They are relentless. Tim Grover has a book called Relentless. Love it. And it's what it.
I hear that, dude. I love that book. Absolutely love that book.
It's strictly just being relentless. It is never giving up. Donald Trump talks about one time you talk about controversy. Ooh, I mentioned Donald Trump, but he talks about one time in business, he was $900 million in the hole. $900 million. That would make most people just absolutely curl up in the fetal position. And now he's worth over $1 billion. So there's a $2 billion swing there almost. Well, he didn't give up. That's what he attributes to it. He goes, I just kept going. Didn't give up. Keep going.
Yeah, and I think the challenge is so many people would rather look at that and go, oh, well, if I had, I could do similar to where somebody, like, nobody sees the $900 million in debt. It's not talked about. It's not, nobody was helping him when he had that, by the way, but now that he makes billions, let's grab him for taxes and all that other crap, because, our government's super good at taking care of people.
Yeah. We could go there as well. I'll get up on my soapbox. I will get up on my soapbox and I will start preaching some things, which sometimes need to be said though. Like, if we go into, get off of business for a minute and just go into society, there's so many misconceptions. And I think, the part maturity is really understanding your own emotions and being able to sit with them for a moment and understand where they're coming from in order to make a mature response. I really think that's what maturity is. It's just being able to go, that's very uncomfortable and I don't like that. Why don't I? Oh, I don't like it because it reminds me of blah, blah, blah. And instead, what we've become is a society where most people react. They don't take that moment. And I think a lot of people do that because they get in the habit of doing it online, where they can immediately react to something. Heart, thumbs down, say something. Because I have, in all of our social media, we have some really ignorant things people have said that you're like, what gives you the right to say that? But my maturity, luckily, is there where I can look at it and think, that poor person acts like this all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, we could go into that. I mean, you can share your viewpoint on that too, if you'd like. I'd love to have a little bit of a conversation on that.
I'll give you a quick, easy lob of an example that I've always used, and I think to focus on this point. We as humans, and I would say this probably was predicated before social media, but we say what we think. We never go to understand why we think that. So I'm going to take myself back to being 10 years old. And let's say, Dr. Greg, you and I are buddies and we're living on Main Street in a tiny town. And my dad gets a brand new Chevy. And you walk up to me and you say, Adam, your dad's an idiot. Chevys suck. Right? We know this is probably a 10-year-old conversation very often. Now, that is saying what we think. So now imagine I go, well, Dr. Greg, why do you think Chevys suck? Now, first off, not many people have the emotional intelligence to just ask that question. They just take their opinion and then they regurgitate it and it becomes an argument, right? So now let's reframe it. Let's say my dad rolls in with a new Chevy. You walk up 10 years old and you're like, wow, Adam, so your dad got a brand new Chevy. My dad has bought 4 brand new Chevys. Every single one of them has ended up in the shop, didn't make it to 20,000 miles, had to get transmission replaced, engines replaced. Therefore, I believe Chevy's a horrible vehicle. Can I argue what you've said? No. That is your personal experience that has led you to believe that Chevys suck. Now I could come back and I go, appreciate you telling me that, Dr. Greg, but well, you wouldn't have been a doctor at 10, I don't think. But this is the fifth Chevy my dad's had. Every single one has gone 300,000 miles, and he takes it in for an oil change. That's about it. Therefore, I think Chevy's an amazing vehicle. We have two polarizing opinion with an understanding on both sides why the opinion is that way. But unfortunately, as a society, we don't do that first part. We talk. We never even think about why we have the opinion. And I think sometimes that reflection, to your point earlier, the maturity of, somebody says something to me and I'm offended. Do I even think about why I'm offended? No, somebody has told me I should be.
That's, I think one of the things that's been lost in our, even I think mostly in the adult world in our society, is the conversation where you can agree to disagree, where you have a conversation that might feel uncomfortable, that you go, that's an interesting point. One of the things I used to do, and I used to love this when I would do public speaking, and feel free to use this if you want in the future, if anybody's listening, but I would have a book that had two sides, and I would hold it up to the class or the people that I was speaking to, and I'd say, what color is this book? And they'd say black. Obviously, you'd go, oh, it's black. You go, oh, interesting. I believe it's sure it's red. Like I'm really sure it's red, and you're really sure it's black. You go, well, let me see what you're looking at, and you flip it, and it's red on the other side. And you're like, oh, you're right, it is black. And you're like, what color's the book? And they go, well, it's red. And I'm like, well, no, it's black. Now, so we're both technically right in that moment, but it doesn't mean that we have to have arguments about who's right. You can both be right about two polar opposites based on your information, your history, your understanding, or even crazier, you can get to the same exact end result from two different directions. Whoa, craziness. So you can both be right and be totally right.
I had two friends arguing about a situation in November about a week and a half ago. And I like the Two Different Sides book because I think that's a little more clear. I've always used a dollar bill. We can agree that this is a dollar bill. Tell me what's on your side. One's going to explain, Eagle or building. The other one's going to say, Abe Lincoln or George Washington, whatever. I'm thinking you and I would probably align pretty well on that stuff.
Yeah, man. But I love those conversations. I almost seek them out because I think that helps me grow as a person. I think we're here as human beings to experience this world and experience life. And if you look at everything as an experience, as opposed to, well, this happened to me and it was a good thing or it was a bad thing, and realize that you put those labels on the experience. Well, that was a good experience or that was a bad experience is really your label. Like you look at a car accident, one person can end up getting a lawsuit out of it that is in their favor, and they made a bunch of money off of a car accident, and they would say, well, I'm glad I got in that car accident. Well, the other person's going, well, I'm not, that sucked. You might have two different experiences from the same thing, but I just love the fact of going into life going, well, that's interesting. And I'm not always there, but I've really trained myself to get there to where I'm really looking at it as it's just an experience instead of, is it good or bad? And then if I define something as good or bad, I ask, well, why is it good or bad? What is it about my belief or my past or my thoughts or my whatever experience that I have connected that?
I think, again, I feel we're very aligned, but so the Dale Carnegie, the first principle that he had is don't criticize, condemn, or complain. And that's kind of the only one in a negative context, but if you were to flip that to a positive context, it's seek to understand. My daughter is going to U of A next year. She's 18 years old. We live in tiny, New Holstein, Wisconsin is where she's going to school. But she had a kid who's going into the trades, and he's probably going to, within 5 years be making 40, 45, 50 bucks an hour. And so he walked up to her and he's like, I can't believe you're going out of state. That's just stupid. You could do something here and make good money and have a guaranteed job. And to me, that's criticizing, right? And so she's struggling with it, going like, how come, like, I get why he's doing what he's doing. But I think part of it is this kid's personal lack of confidence, right? So he deflects that as putting her down. And I said, really what he's trying to say is, Haley, why Tucson? What excites you about going to Arizona? What excites you about getting out of small town Wisconsin? And because he doesn't know how to ask those questions, it comes out as, why don't you just do this because you don't know what you're doing?
Well, he's coming at it from his perspective. He
Yep.
can't see himself going to another state and doing something like that because it doesn't make sense for his perspective. So
Right.
when somebody says anything to me, positive, negative, good, bad, ignorant, or smart, I realize it's their perspective and it's their experience, and they're just looking at it going, oh, I couldn't do that, or I could do that, or why would you do that? And I always ask, well, tell me about why, what you're, when you're asking that, where are you coming from? What does that mean? Like, and generally
Yes.
you'll get to the point of like, oh, you don't understand it because you're going to be making $50 an hour in 2 years and you can't even fathom going out of state to go study what I'm studying. And, it's just their perspective. So, if anybody can put this into practice, really what it is take that moment, and instead of reacting, take that moment in between something occurring, an experience, a statement, whatever, and ask yourself, what kind of response am I going to give?
Yeah.
As opposed to just reacting to whatever, because then you really, you have no control if you're just reactive all the time.
I think the biggest power is just being like, if you genuinely care and being curious. And now societally, I would say, we're moving towards not allowing people to do that. And I intentionally distance myself from that. I'll use the kids one, for example. I'm in my mid-30s, and I've seen posts on Facebook and stuff like, oh, don't ask me if I'm having kids. That's out of place. If I care about you as an individual, if it's a curious question, why can't we just be adults and answer it? Like, hey, Dr. Greg, your wife, you've been married for 5 years. I'm making this up. Have you guys thought about having kids? If you're offended by my question, going back to reflecting, yes, you probably have a lot of internal stuff. And what if it's just being honest and we can't, I'm struggling with it, I don't want to talk about it. Or there's also we can't afford it. I mean, there's a slew of options, right?
Or you can just, hey, it's not right for us. Because I think what most people, there's a fear, and when you're afraid, you come back with a wall. You come back with venom, anger, frustration, whatever. But there's a fear that they won't accept me for my decision. But if you have come to that decision logically based on what you want in life, and if you're totally secure with that, then you should be able to go, oh, it's not right for us. We don't want to.
Yep. And
then that should be okay for the person to go, really? That's amazing. Or I can't imagine that. That's not something I would want. Well, we're two different people. That what they want and what I want don't have to be the same thing. I think it's funny how people try to project their beliefs, their experiences, their conclusions, their reasons onto other people. You have to think like me. Well, what I like to think about that is, what gives you the right to think that they should think like you? Because if we all thought the exact same things, what fun would that be?
Real boring.
It would be a real boring existence. We'd all be business owners. We'd all work for someone else if that was the case. Like, that we would all do the same thing. But that's what
be real boring. Yet there'd be a shit ton of competition in the same sense.
Oh, yeah, right, exactly. It'd be boring, but everybody we'd be sheep. It'd be sheeple. Which is another I could get on that for a while too. How many sheeple there are out there. But relating this back to business, how do these understandings and your thought process, because I totally believe the thought processes you're talking about are the correct ones to run a company. How does it go into working with helping people within your organization, hiring, growing, putting the operations in, developing people within your organization?
Well, so if you're ever bored, just Google my name, and a lot of this can be. I've written a few articles for the Entrepreneur magazine. A lot of this stuff is in there, but kind of coined it as like this empathetic transparency. So the fact that I am going to share with you where I'm at mentally, because I think that's fair to you as an individual. And I think a lot of times the corporate politicize avenue, meaning I'm going to kind of dance around how I think Dr. Greg might feel about it. And it takes them three months to make a damn decision because I couldn't say, you know what? I don't like the way you did that. We need to redo it. Right. Sometimes it's as simple, but it's also understanding where they're at. Having simple conversations about what you expect, where you want it to be, and where you want it to go cuts through so much bullshit. And I mean, our organization continues to grow leaps and bounds. And it is just having honest conversations with people. But I think the challenge is most people, going back to what you said about perception and my view, right? The golden rule is do unto others as you would have done unto you. As you mentioned earlier, you and I are not the same human being. If you're going to treat me how you want to be treated, you've done an injustice to me, in my opinion, because we're not the same human. We grew up in different areas. We have different perceptions. The platinum rule is do unto others as they want done unto them. The challenge is you have to not be lazy enough to get to know everybody. And if you can truly get to know what makes them tick, what gets them excited, it's beneficial for motivation, inspiration. But when you're having that very difficult conversation, you've gotten to know them to the point that they know that it's coming from here as a way to move the business forward, and not because of my ego, not because of my pride. It's because we're trying to do this quickly, efficiently, because all of our goal is to get Carbliss in as many hands as possible. And I, part of that, just it's always being transparent and open with them, which helps them know that when we have difficult conversations, we're going to be in front of it. When we have great conversations, we're going to be in front of it. But it's all under the veil of helping you understand and know where the business is going and why, and not putting a bullshit flag up in front just because that's what corporate America says we should do.
That is so, so true. We talk about that a lot with the mission, the vision, the values, creating your standards. One of the values that we have in my companies is transparency. Just transparency, man. It's okay. If you're having a bad day, just say you're having a bad day. Like, why try to hide it? Like, dude, I'm having a bad day because of these reasons. I'm all over the place. But like, dude, well, let's talk about it. How can I help you? That's why family is one of our core values. We want to help each other out like family would look out for each other. All right, how can I help you, man? Wow, I got this stuff going on and whatever. What, can we get you a counselor? Can we, give you some extra time off? Do you need help with something? Whatever. I believe that's the right way to run a company. Yeah, you want to help a lot of people. You want to make a lot of money. And you have a lot of fun. But there's a way to do it where everyone wins. It doesn't have to be breaking other people's backs in order to get there. I think that's how we really work in our companies. Is how can we do this and everybody wins? That's the fun part. But I can't help you win if I don't know you as an individual. So that is so, so true, man. You've absolutely dropped some really great information in this, and people really need to understand it, because that's the hard part. It's one thing to listen to some words that you've said. You've had some really good stuff. Retrospection, pride costs money. Being relentless. Seeking to understand, be curious. Which I love, the listening to understand. I love that. I love having conversations where you listen so intently that the person's like, man, you're the coolest person I've ever met in my entire life. And you haven't said anything about yourself. I love that.
Yep.
Make your expectations clear, be transparent, some really big things. Putting those into practice and becoming that person is what people that are listening need to understand and put into play. So any last thoughts that you'd like to put out there to people listening to this, Adam?
I think I'm going to kind of summarize everything you just said. We mentioned, I brought up the Dale Carnegie book. You brought up Relentless from Tim Grover. There's all these stats that go out on social media about, Warren Buffett or Bill Gates or whoever these super wealthy people are, that how many books they read, right? I think the challenge is, because they become so accessible, is that we think by reading all these books, we'll become more intellectual. But I think you could take any general, I'll call it self-help business book, right? And rather than reading 20 books, read that one fucking book 20 times.
Yeah.
And focus, similar to that P&L example, take one principle and master the shit out of it. Then read it again, master the next principle. And that will help you become a more methodical individual that like all these, like conceptually, right? There's probably 10, 15 concepts that thousands of books funnel into. So find one that speaks to you and just focus on that day in, day out. Because that is how we will take this progressional change. I think the challenge with 20 books is you mutt yourself and you take little bits and pieces, but you don't ever really see, you take the easy one out of each one, right? And you don't really focus on pulling yourself out of anything. I think that would be the one thing to share. Focus on one thing and just go.
I totally love that. Totally love that. Everybody needs to pay attention to these principles from somebody who's putting it into play and becoming successful, but also understanding that success comes from challenge. Success comes from putting these things into practice over time. It is not an overnight thing. It is a who you become over time thing, being relentless, constantly putting yourself out there and moving forward without stopping. That's the secret sauce of success. And really, in my case, and I've heard this from so many successful people, it's enjoying the process of becoming successful. That's what true success really is. Movement towards a goal and being successful in the moment, being happy, content in the moment, even though you're not there yet. I love that you said, didn't take an income for a period of time, a paycheck for a period of time. It's not always about the paycheck. It's about what you're creating. And the people that create and put that time and effort and energy and constantly move forward, those are the people that end up winning big in the end. But that comes with a lot of self-knowledge, knowing who you are, growing in maturity as an individual, and helping, provide some value to other people, which then eventually grows into something. So love that. I love it, Adam, man. What a great episode. Really appreciate it. Everybody needs to hop online, go to the Real Adam Kroener. You can click the link, or you can go to Drink Carbliss, Carbliss. I think I'm going to have to make a trip north, go hang out for a little while. We could have a great conversation. I could talk around a fire with a guitar with you probably for a couple hours and maybe drink some Carbliss while we're at it.
I'll try to sing. It won't be pretty, but I'll try.
Well, yeah. That's okay. You don't need to sing. Once again, thanks for your service. I really appreciate you, Adam. Everybody, thanks for listening to another episode of Fix Your BS, where BS stands for belief systems, also balance sheets. It can also stand for business systems, because all those things matter. They all come back to your beliefs as an individual. Make sure you share this with somebody. There's a lot of nuggets in here. If they own a business, if they own a small business, really share this out with them. That's how we get to reach more people, but also how those people can get help by what we're doing. Thanks for listening. We will see you next time, where we talk about 5 major key points of life: relationships, business, health, finances, and beliefs. Until next time, thanks, Adam, for being here. Everybody have a great day. Go check them out. Check us out. Share this with everybody. And we'll see you next time in building the life on your terms that you want, the life of your dreams on your terms.
Thanks for having me, Greg.
Yeah, thanks, bud.